展開ならこの結末を誰が予想できた。
予選通過1位の緑谷伊月くん持ちポイント1000万。
Everyone remembers the UA Sports Festival for Deku versus Shoto. But that fight wasn't Deku saying, "I am here." It was the moment he proved he wasn't ready to say it yet. Because Deku isn't a prodigy. He's a first year who just inherited the greatest power in the world and was told to perform in front of the entire hero society. That pressure would break most adults. He's 15.
Are you ready?
Tournament arcs usually serve a clear purpose. The Chunin exams introduce rivals. The Hunter exam tests limits. The Dark Tournament builds legends. The World Tournament celebrates power. And the UA Sports Festival doesn't fully do any of that. It doesn't create lasting rivalries. It doesn't push power ceilings. And it doesn't let victory feel triumphant. Because its real function isn't growth, it's exposure. This is where quirks get evaluated, not celebrated, where new names appear not as heroes but as risks, and where One for All begins to reveal itself as a burden with history, not a gift without cost. The festival isn't big because of the games. It's big because this is where the students stop being protected. So if the sports festival was meant to inspire hope, why does it quickly reveal the cracks in All Might's legacy? Season 1 of My Hero Academia is patient. Deku's power doesn't explode, it fractures. Every punch costs him something. Every improvement feels earned, painful, and slow. That pacing teaches us how this world works. So when Season 2 opens with the UA Sports Festival, something quietly breaks. The story suddenly accelerates. New students, new quirks, new rivals, new themes, all introduced in a single compressed day. That's the contradiction. You can't spend an entire season telling us power is dangerous and growth takes time, then turn your biggest public event into a speedrun. Aizawa tells us the sports festival replaces the Olympics.
そして日本において今かつてのオリンピックに代わるのが遊泳体育祭だ。
And that line matters. Because the Olympics doesn't happen in an afternoon. They stretch across days, weeks. They're built on anticipation, escalation, and variety. Here, we get 3 events: an obstacle race, a cavalry battle, and one-on-one fights. 2 of those exist mainly to eliminate students as quickly as possible, which is especially funny when you remember UE employs people who can literally reshape terrain, construct infrastructure, and clone manpower on demand. This school could have turned the festival into a gauntlet: urban zones, rescue simulations, team-based endurance trials, night phases, disaster response scenarios. Instead, we sprint. And the result is that Class 1B, the supposed equal to Class 1A, barely gets room to exist. Which is wild, because later seasons proved their quirks are genuinely interesting. This wasn't a lack of imagination. It was a lack of time. And the irony is hard to miss. Anime has no problem stretching time when it wants to. The Fourth Great Ninja War technically takes place over 2 days, and unfolds across hundreds of episodes. The sports festival doesn't need to go that far. But when your Olympics replacement feels shorter than a school field day, something is off. And when you rush introductions like this, you don't just lose characters. You lose tension. You lose attachment. You lose the sense that this world is as big as it claims to be. Even though the sports festival feels rushed, its impact comes from how direct it is. There's no mystery, no complex rules, no hidden mechanics. You understand it instantly. And that simplicity matters because tournament arcs aren't just about fights. They're filters. They strip characters down and force the story to answer a few brutal questions. Who matters? How strong are they? And what do they become after? The Chunin exams introduce rivals by collision. Kids from different villages clash, not just physically, but ideologically. You leave that arc knowing exactly who will matter later even if they lose. The Hunter exam tests limits instead of strength, not who hits hardest, but who adapts, who survives, and who breaks when the rules change. Power means nothing if you can't endure. The Dark Tournament builds legends. It doesn't just introduce fighters, it forges reputations. By the end, they're not participants anymore, they're myths. And the World Tournament celebrates power openly. No subtext, no shame. This is strength at its peak, and the story wants you to admire it. On the other hand, the UA Sports Festival doesn't fully do any of that. And that's not a failure, it's a choice. Because this arc isn't about discovering how strong these students are. It's about exposing them before they're ready. For the first time, they're not protected by classrooms or training fields. They're not being evaluated by teachers. They're being watched, judged, ranked, not as students, but as products. That's why victories feel awkward. Why some wins feel empty. Why even success comes with discomfort. The sports festival doesn't leave you satisfied. It leaves you unsettled. And once you realize that's the point, the arc starts to make a lot more sense. After the sports festival exposes these students to the world, one character makes it painfully clear what that exposure does to a kid who isn't emotionally ready. Shoto's burn scar is introduced early, clean, without mystery. That matters. You don't need to theorize, you don't need a delayed reveal, you feel it immediately. And more importantly, you see how it affects him. Shoto's trauma isn't layered in complexity, it's layered in weight. He's a kid born into a legacy war, a father chasing perfection, a power he associates with pain, control, and loss. That kind of upbringing doesn't guarantee a villain, but it does guarantee damage. And what someone becomes after that depends on what support they're given next. During the sports festival, Shoto versus Zero. The fight isn't memorable because it's flashy. It's memorable because Shoto is cold, efficient, emotionally closed off. He doesn't enjoy winning, he just ends it. That's what unprocessed trauma looks like in motion. The sports festival forces this conflict into the open, not through introspection, but through confrontation. There's no subtle metaphor here, and that's a good thing. Some pain doesn't need symbolism, it doesn't need clever framing, it just needs space to exist, and someone reckless enough to challenge it. And that's where Deku enters the picture. Deku versus Shoto isn't just a fight, it's a collision between two broken trajectories. Deku has power he can't control, Shoto has control he refuses to use. That difference defines everything about this match. From the start, Deku knows he can't win cleanly. He can't overpower Shoto. He can't outplay him. So he chooses something else. He chooses sacrifice. Every time Deku destroys his own body is not for advantage. It's a message. He's not trying to defeat Shoto. He's trying to reach him. That's why the moment he shouts,
"Kimi no tsukara janai ka!"
hits so hard. Because Deku isn't attacking strength, he's attacking the cage around it. Deku understands something no one else does. Shoto isn't holding back because he's afraid of losing. He's holding back because that power feels like surrendering to his father. So Deku risks everything with no guarantee it will work. That's empathy in motion. This isn't a highlight reel. It's a player diving for a loose ball in the final seconds knowing it might end their season. In basketball, it's the role player taking the charge against a star. Deku doesn't fight to win. He fights to change the game. And that's why this match feels bigger than the tournament itself. Deku walks away physically broken. Shoto walks away mentally shaken. And that's the point. The victory doesn't belong to the scoreboard. It belongs to the shift. Shoto takes one step forward, not toward winning, but toward himself. And in a story about heroes, that kind of growth matters more than any medal. Then come the grand final. Bakugo versus Shoto. On paper, it should be explosive. Instead, it feels muted. Not because Bakugo is boring, not because Shoto is weak, but because Shoto is distracted. He's emotionally cracked open. still processing what Deku forced him to face. In sports, this happens all the time. A brutal semifinal drains the real contenders. The final becomes technical, not legendary. It's not a bad fight, it's just the wrong emotional peak. The arc already climaxed after Deku versus Shoto. Everything after feels like paperwork. While heroes celebrate, Shigaraki watches, and honestly, he should have done more. This was the perfect moment for chaos, for disruption, for ideology. Instead, he sits and watches, which only works if the story wants us to understand one thing. Villains don't always interrupt your system. Sometimes they just wait for them to fail.
ご飯一緒に食べよう
All Might tells Deku to use the sports festival to
緑
say,
谷出久が君が来たってことを世の中に知らしめてほしい
emotionally it lands. Narratively, I think it's unnecessary. Deku can barely control his quirk. He can't dominate. He can't be flashy. He can't fight safely without breaking himself. There is no version of this tournament where Deku becomes a symbol. So what All Might is really asking isn't for Deku to succeed. It's for him to carry a burden he isn't ready for. All Might doesn't know how to mentor weakness. He only knows how to project strength. This moment isn't about strategy. It isn't even about Deku. It's about All Might's blind spot. A hero isn't trying to pass down a legacy without fully understanding the cost of inheriting it. And while the challenge is unnecessary, it deepens their bond. Not because it helps Deku win, but because it shows even the greatest hero can be wrong. The UA Sports Festival isn't about crowning champions. It's about removing safety nets. It exposes trauma, inequality, legacy, exploitation. It feels rushed because growth is rushed. These kids aren't ready, and that's the point. The sports festival doesn't fail because it's short. It feels uncomfortable because it's honest. It shows a society that celebrates heroes before they're whole, before they're ready, before they understand what the spotlight costs. And maybe that's why it sticks, not as a triumph, but as a warning. If this is your first time here, this video is only half the conversation. The first part dives deeper into how the world was built and why that foundation matters. I leave it linked for you, and if you enjoy this breakdown, consider subscribing. More videos like this are coming. I'll see you in the next one.